as this multi-hyphenate storyteller, I get to do all three. I get to do entrepreneurship, creativity, and social justice. I get to help change laws around medical malpractice caps. I get to talk to people about trauma and mental health and body shaming. My art is a conduit for us to get deeper about how we can live a more satisfying, more generous, and kind human existence.
I'm so excited to be speaking with Susan Lieu, Vietnamese-American author, playwright, and performer. She's the creator of her theatrical solo show, 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother, which received critical acclaim from LA Times, NPR, and American Theater. Her debut memoir, The Manicurist's Daughter, is an Apple Book Pick of the Month and Must Listen of the Month, and has received accolades from the New York Times, NPR Books, Elle Magazine, and The Washington Post. She's also the co-founder of Socola Chocolatier, a proud alum of Harvard, Yale, and Hedgebrook, and a mom of a 4-year-old boy. Susan, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
I read your memoir, The Manicurist's Daughter, almost all in one sitting.
What? That's amazing.
And it's going to stay with me a long time. I couldn't put it down. You say that in your book, you transform intergenerational trauma into healing by going on a quest to know your late mother, whom you were forbidden to speak about after she died. We're doing this interview in September 2024, and your book came out about 6 months ago. At this point in your journey with this story, what themes are top of mind for you now?
I think for a long time, I was just like, oh, I just want my father's approval and my mother-in-law's approval and the work that I do. And I have come to this place where I'm like really accepting why I will never get that from them and really honoring where they come from to have that belief that I should have a different career. So what I'm trying to say is I'm not like thinking about that anymore. I'm thinking about all of the feedback I've been getting from everyone else about what this book is doing. I get feedback that it's being taught in high schools and colleges. I get feedback that single moms out there get inspired by my mother to keep going. And it's just really been nurturing and giving great care to the self-doubt that exists in me, that voice that is so critical to say, see, I do matter. I am making a difference. And so I feel like I'm getting the second wind of really focusing on my mission of intergenerational healing. I feel like I'm going through my own evolution of myself, of really assessing, wow, what did I think success was the day before my book published? And what do I think success is now? And why does that really matter? You know, I want to have fuel to keep going instead of debilitating myself and my own frustrations layered by my own conditioning of where I come from, right? To think success is money. Sales are all right, for like a D-list celebrity like me. But it's more like I'm just kind of sitting here in this moment of thinking, I want to just relish and be in the joy it is to manifest my dreams. And also to not be so critical of myself so that I can keep doing the work.
It sounds like it's such a time of celebration, recognition, and letting that praise sink in. What do you think success is now?
Yeah, I think success is being able to nourish myself with my values. I've been really sitting with what matters to me. Because the ambitious Susan is like, 1 million books? We're not at 1 million books sold? You know, there's that Susan. And then there's the Susan now that's sitting here going like, what are my values? My values are taking care of myself physically, mentally, and emotionally. So like in the prologue, I don't drive myself to the ER again because I'm like trying to accomplish so much to finish the book. My second value is to have really intimate relationships with people where we feel loved, seen, and celebrated on a deep level. And the third one is just to support people, uplift them, coach them, get them to a better place through my words, through my shows, through my interactions with them, so that they feel life-giving when they're with me, and so that they can continue to give that life to all those that surround them. Like we are just ricocheting off each other all the time. And if I can know that in my lifetime, I'm making it better one person at a time, that feels much more grounding and much more doable than, why did you sell 1 million books?
I'm getting a sense of the nature of spirituality as you talk about it. And through your book, there are pieces of this too, right? Like the accidentally joining a cult, and
it happens.
It happens, and then seeing the psychic. And I'm curious at this point, how do you think about your work as it relates to spirituality, or do you think about it that way?
I think for me, I've spent a long time feeling really alone in my life. After my mom died from a botched tummy tuck when I was 11, I felt quite abandoned. And I felt like in my life, I got to do it myself. Part of that is being a child of refugees. And part of it is just feeling like I grew up in a family where it felt like love was conditional based on what my body looked like, based on if I got the right grades. And so there was always just a lot of pining to prove myself. So I did feel really alone. And it has been through the work of getting to know who my mother is, even though my family won't talk about her, and all of the great means that I do to know her, I do feel less alone. And it's tricking my mind, really, because my mind is like, what you see is what you get in life. And so if you feel alone, you are alone. Like the thoughts and the reality just merge into one, even though we're conditioned to, if I have this baggage around being lonely, that's my belief. And yet, as I kept getting to know my mother, and she kept coming through in many different ways spiritually, it is this big reminder that my existence is not just me. It's not just me. It's actually the compound of all of my ancestors. And my life is not just what I can see. There are many more dimensions to the human experience. And if I can allow that in, and when I do not feel alone, and honestly, my mother has proven it many times that I am not alone, then I feel more grounded in who I am. Especially in the quote unquote Western world, we're very detached from our ancestors. We're detached from death. We're so detached, right? Because this like individual mindset is what a lot of this country has been built on, in America at least. But when you can submit to being interconnected with the past, present, and future, with your bodies and your ancestors, right? Like my body is actually the manifestation of my mother's DNA and my grandmother's DNA, and it's just their bodies too. Like if I can sit in all of that as I live this crazy life that we call human existence, do I feel more complete? Do I feel less scared? Do I feel emboldened to do the thing that I want to do? And I would say, as I have been walking a spiritual path for about 20 years now, and I fall off the horse a lot. I do. And it's the times where I'm taking care of my body and taking care of my mind and my spirit. When I can cultivate all of those things, there is a beautiful balance. And I am very charged in what I do and very focused in what I do.
One theme that came up a lot for me as I was reading your book was this notion around emotionality. In a lot of East Asian cultures, stoicism is kind of held up in high regard. And you're the youngest of 4 siblings, and there's a whole cast of colorful characters of extended family in your book, both here in the US and in Vietnam. And I kept reading, like, it seems like Susan's a little bit different. Like you wear your emotions externally. Like this came out through many, many pieces in the book. How has your relationship or understanding of your own emotions changed through processing them with a wider audience?
So in the book, I share with the reader that on my last day with my mother, I told her I hated her. She wouldn't let me go to volleyball tryouts. I wanted to go. She said no. So I slammed the door on her. She's going to her plastic surgery, which I didn't know about. I go to school. And I hold on to that shame for the next 2 decades. And I never tell my siblings about it because we're not allowed to talk about her or what happened. And it is only until my siblings come to my one-woman show, 140 pounds, they see me live go back to that moment. That's when they finally know. I have stuffed my emotions inside of me for a long time. And whenever I tapped into them or asked my siblings about stories about Ma or are you okay, they were like, you're so emotional. You're stuck in the past. It was very minimizing. It was very blaming. And a long time, I believed them and I felt like it was my fault. And it was only when I could name this shame publicly in a play, in a book, did I feel so relieved and liberated from that shame. In a way, like Alcoholics Anonymous, they say you're only as sick as your secrets. And now when I'm able to just fully admit that to you, I feel free. And I feel more, actually, ironically, stepping into my own power, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like reducing the amount of fear there is in my body. Because hiding that, we are lodging that trauma in our body and it has nowhere to go. So when I admit that out loud, when I share my emotions, when I can be vulnerable with people, even if someone has hurt me and I have the courage to tell them that, and when I have the courage to actually state boundaries because I'm so now very aware of my feelings and I can name them internally and now externally, boy, do I feel more with integrity in my life. And also I'm able to just kind of let it go, right? Like it's not this weight on my shoulder anymore. And so I think that's what doing all of this work in the arts has been, is that I am liberating myself. I'm relinquishing myself of burden. And when I do that, I give other people permission to do that for themselves.
We are going to hear an excerpt from your book. It's from a chapter titled The Calling. And for a little context, this is after a string of unfulfilling jobs, you have gone back into the world of live performance. And in this excerpt, you and your workshop instructor talk about the story of your mom.
This is page 139. Who really wants to hear about my dead mom? Plus, my voice lowered to a whisper. It's my family's dirty laundry. They would be so pissed if they knew I was talking about her. I kept rearranging my sticky notes, but thought about her point. Should I do what's easy or what's hard? Nothing was at stake with the performance art. Even if I put on that show, would I have fully confronted my fear, or would I have just checked the box? I let out a big sigh. Who was I kidding? I couldn't outsmart myself. Family is really complicated, she said. Your mom sounds like a really big influence in your life. Ashlyn listened so well, I could finally listen to myself. It is. She was. She is. Ashlyn offered me a hug, and then I cried into the workshop facilitator's chest. Everything I had been holding on to came rushing out in big sobs. I knew the show I created had to be about something that actually mattered to me. Otherwise, I would still be a coward. When the tears finally stopped, I felt emboldened to take the high road. I would write a show about Ma and memorize it in 2 weeks. I brainstormed 30 scenes, rearranging all the sticky notes as I talked it out loud with my coach. It was go time.
Let's take a moment to reflect on this question. What personal stories do you want to share more openly with others? Outside of hosting this podcast, I partner with leaders in the workplace to turn professional challenges into leadership successes and career progression. I love working with executive leaders, people managers, and of course, ampersands. If any of this sounds interesting to you, reach out to me at jessicawan.com. That's JESSICAWAN. Now, back to the show. You have done so many incredible things in your life, including the show and the book, and also co-founding a chocolate company, Socola Chocolatier, with your sister, Wendy, who is also heavily featured in your book. Growing up the child of manicurists, how did you get into fine chocolate? It's a luxury, right? A food that's just eaten for pleasure.
Yeah, great question. So our nail salon, Today's Nails, was across the street from the mall, which had See's Candies. And every time we'd go park in the mall and then walk over to the salon, we'd pass by See's Candy, and my sister and I wanted to sample. And so we had lots of samples over the years. And my sister was so curious, how do you make these chocolates? And also, how do you make these chocolates so our aunts and our parents would like them? Because they were quite sweet and they really weren't for the Vietnamese palate. So my sister finds a magazine article, I think it was Gourmet Magazine, for a mocha truffle. She starts experimenting. Great. Her friends' parents like it. Our neighbor across the street, who was a marketing director for the local talk show radio, was like, you should just start a company and come on the show. And I said, oh, you're right. We should. And my sister was like, are you kidding me? Like, what are we going to do? I was like, please, Wendy, let's open up Microsoft Word and open some clip art, and we're going to make a logo. And it was just it just felt quite exciting to do. I was also on the board of the farmers market in our town in Santa Rosa. So yes, I'm an overachiever. Yes, I was a board member when I was a teenager. So I'm 16. My sister is 19. They give us a booth right in front of our dad's nail salon. And we just start selling the thing. In the beginning, it was mostly Western flavors. And then over time, we started folding in flavors from our Vietnamese heritage into it. So today, we have a little Saigon box, which is a 4-course meal in 9 flavors: Vietnamese coffee, jasmine tea. We've got pho and sriracha. We have cognac and durian, lychee, passion fruit, vanilla bean, guava patouille. It's amazing, right? To be able to share unapologetically who we are and to make chocolates that our aunts like and our fathers like, right? But it's a celebration of being Vietnamese instead of being ashamed to have different food or a flat nose, or, like I was made fun of so much for being different when I was growing up. And now to have the courage to be celebrating what makes us different, we live in an exciting time. And so it was a dream that my sister had. She really wanted this to happen, to change it from like a hobby into something bigger. And after I graduated Harvard, I was in Vietnam working with USAID and sustainable cacao development. Of course, right? Like how random, but also how full circle. And my sister visits me and she's like, help me grow my dream. And so I moved back to the States and I help her build it. I'm peddling samples at Whole Foods Market, trying to figure out what a UPC code is, trying to figure out what our packaging should look like. So this has been a 23-year journey. And just last month, we opened our second brick and mortar store inside the San Francisco airport in Terminal 3.
Amazing. I can't wait to check it out. I'm going to be flying out of there soon. Talk to me a little bit about the balancing act. You are a mom of a young boy. You describe yourself as a cool mom. You're helping Wendy with the chocolate business. You're obviously an author, a playwright, and then you had this whole life in business as well. And, working in nonprofits. You were on that board as a teenager. What does that balancing act look like now for you?
I think I was definitely driving myself insane. for a period of time, especially after my book launched, and I wanted to put on the most spectacular tour ever, and I wanted to get as many sales as possible ever. Like, I was in this grasping of, if the book doesn't do well, then I am nothing. I'm an Aries, everyone, so very egotistical and stubborn. And my friend just read my chart, and he was like, "Oh, you're triple fire in this other culture." And I'm like, okay. So it's basically to be inside a fire, right? It's blazing, it's hot, and it's going in any direction, right? And it's just like, whoa, this looks great. This is shiny. Yeah, I want that badge. Okay, let's go. And that's why I'm telling you, you know, I'm just really trying to focus on nourishing myself with my own values.
Yeah.
Because I just finished 5 years on another board, an international nonprofit called Asylum Access. I was doing board work there. I have my multiple identities, and it gets to a point where I am exhausted.
Yeah.
My girlfriends the other day were like, "You're burned out." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just not trying hard enough." And then they're like, "You're burned out, Susan." Right? But it's like the nature of being so consumed in like attaining worthiness through achievement, right?
Yeah.
Through living in capitalist America, through being a child of refugees, like there is this need to prove myself, right? Because I remember so many interviews that were like, "But are you proud of yourself, Susan?" And I was like, no, I'm not, you know, or sometimes I'd be like, I think I'm getting there. Like, it's been like a very slow thing to attain my own self-worth.
Yeah.
And because I see it so fleeting and damaging and exhausting, I'm just really being like, wow, I've been doing that for decades. It got me to Harvard, got me to Yale. It got me, you know, features in the New York Times, LA Times, all these great things. And yet those are just things. What do I need to do for myself on the daily so that when I go to bed at night, I am feeling relaxed and just content, you know, instead of like having trouble sleeping, being mad at my partner, getting really short with my son. Like, that's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really prioritize my physical, emotional, mental health. And so it's like working out 3 times a week at these certain specific classes after drop off. Oh, it's like required, you know, it's maintenance. Like, it's like I used to just schedule over all these things that really I need to do to serve me and to take care of me and to be my best me. I used to be like, oh, that works for you? That sounds great. Yeah, I'll just move things around. Or yeah. But it's like, no, I am a middle-aged creature of habit. And I really want to be my best me. So that means we're going to have to reschedule. You know what I mean? So I think as I've gotten older, it's like realizing that when I set a boundary with someone or say what my non-negotiable is, or, oh my God, practice the N word of no, it's so I can actually show up even better as my best self, right? Because I know it starts inside. And I think for the longest time, I thought it was this people pleasing on the outside. And then now it's just like, I have a limited amount of time and I pay for daycare. So if I'm going to say yes to this one thing or that thing, or try to get a babysitter in place because my husband's also out of town and traveling, and we're just trying to live this post-COVID life where it feels nonstop. Yeah. I got to make sure it's worth it to me and that it is okay to say no.
Absolutely. It's come up so much on this podcast that, you know, it's like we spend several decades of our lives learning and attaining and achieving and racing towards something. And then we spend the rest of the time unlearning all of this stuff that, you know, clearly got us places, you know, to this highest level or degree or whatever numeric form of success. But now middle age is a great time to realize what we really want to invest in. And I'm hearing, you know, to create the life that you want to create intentionally. What do you think ties together your work?
I have done a lot of wandering in my life. And I remember when I was younger, I was obsessed with talking to older people, being like, what's your advice for living life? Do what you want in life. Just do what you want. Go. If you're curious about it, go do it. And I did, which means my resume looks wild. Like once an HR person was like, you're a flight risk. And I was like, yeah, I am. But if we have open conversations, like I don't think I am. And she's like, she looked at me and I knew that was the wrong answer. And so I read What Color is Your Parachute? And this has been the most important exercise I could have ever done for my career. It said, you're walking into a room and who do you want to hang out with first, second, third? And the people have, because the first group has just left, then who's next? Who's next? Who's next? And the three people I want to hang out with are people who are into social justice, who are into being creative, and who are entrepreneurs. And as I've tried and experimented different careers in my 20s, I've done one part, maybe even two parts. The chocolate company was both entrepreneurial and creative for me because to launch our sriracha chili truffle, I made a telenovela called For the Love of Chocolate, and I was a giant chocolate bar falling in love with sriracha. Like there were elements where I could be in control of that. When I was a management consultant, and it was none of those three.
Yeah.
And now, as this multi-hyphenate storyteller, I get to do all three. I get to do entrepreneurship, creativity, and social justice. I get to help change laws around medical malpractice caps. I get to talk to people about trauma and mental health and body shaming. Like, I get to talk about wonderful things through my art, and my art is a conduit for us to get deeper about how we can live a more satisfying, more generous, and kind human existence. I'm walking my path, and it has come through a lot of iteration, and also working in places I had no place like that I was truly square peg round hole. And I just kept pounding and pounding it in, hoping that it would I could lodge myself in anywhere. But now, on the brink of being 40, I'm just like, does it fit in the trifecta? No? Okay, I'm busy. Because that, if it's going to bring me more fulfillment, then when I'm with you, when I'm on that stage or at that conference or we're putting on some summit, you will be that much more fulfilled because of the me that's showing up.
Yeah. I love this image of the trifecta, the Venn diagram. Like it has to fit there. What advice do you have for people who are pursuing or thinking of pursuing an ampersand life?
In my own time and in my own way. All right? Like for the longest time, boy, did I wish I was that Asian who was pre-med, then became a doctor. And now I have money. I'm just like, that is the perfect Cinderella story for a career. And I wish I just was that one hit wonder, because we know we understand what that is. And then we know when we've hit it. And I'm just kind of like, that's not me. That's not who I am. That doesn't fuel me.
Through these interviews, we are co-creating the Ampersand Manifesto, Principles for Leading a Multi-Passionate Life. What do you think should be included in the manifesto?
When you live your truth, you give permission to others to do the same. You can't deny your truth. And when you do deny your truth, you just waste a lot of time because the truth is going to come back to you, right? Or the calling of your truth, it will never go away. It'll just get softer because we ignore it. But when you can honor your truth, when you can live your truth, you are exalted and you give other people the permission to do that too, so that we live a life that is more life-giving. And everyone we interact with can also ripple the same.
I love it. Susan, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Folks, you can learn more about Susan at www.susanlieu.me or follow her on Instagram at Susan Lieu. The Manicurist Daughter is available wherever you buy your books, and we'll link to all of these in the show notes.
Thanks so much.
If you liked this show, share it with your friends and fellow Ampersands, and make sure to hit the follow button to be notified when new episodes drop. It would mean the world to us if you took 2 minutes to rate and review the show. Just go to the main show page on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and look for the stars. I had a chance to listen back on my interview with Susan. She shared so much wisdom, and I wanted to pull out a few key takeaways. 1, I really resonated with the journey she's been on around success and how the meaning of that word has shifted drastically for her. Earlier in her life, success depended on external validation, whether that was praise that she wanted from her family, the schools she went to, job title or salary, or the many traditional measures of, have you made something of yourself? But the way Susan talks about success now is much more internal, taking care of herself and feeling content, which allows her to also take care of and uplift others. 2, Susan linked success with nourishing herself with her values. I really liked her visual of agitating her values like in a washing machine. The word that I typically hear when talking about values is alignment. But we really do need both alignment and agitation because we are constantly in motion and surrounded by change. 3, when we feel, we heal. Susan repeats this phrase 3 times in her book, and it's a theme through her work. Humans are feeling creatures, even though some of us might not like to admit it. I personally have found the arts to be a gateway to those feelings. Writing, music, dance, visual arts, creating art, experiencing art, and sharing it with each other. And it's beautiful how Susan is sharing her art to inspire others to feel and process too.
And now to have the courage to be celebrating what makes us different, we live in an exciting time.